cultural difference really matter. It really makes a big impression on somebody when you come in and you sit down and follow their own protocol. One time I was meeting a Chinese delegation, and I was used to the old school Chinese courtesy. Normally, when you meet somebody in the old days, the Asian aspect of it is you would present your business card with two hands and you present it to them with a slight bow of the head. And they would return the business card and you would put it in your shirt pocket right next to your heart. So the first time that I met a group of HR professionals from China, they were coming here to check out how we did business in human resources. So the very first time I met him, we followed that protocol. And then I met a high-ranking Chinese official. He was apparently a secretary to the Communist Party of China, which I didn't realize at the time is a super lofty position and their entire huge aspect of power. He sat down there and he says, hey, and so we're talking back and forth with the translator, and he had broken English and I had no Chinese at all whatsoever. As much as I tried some Mandarin, it didn't work. They laughed at me. So he took his business card in his pocket and he flung it across the table just like an American. I was kind of disappointed. I kind of liked the Asian aspect of the presenting and the formality, but he was trying to be more American. So I was preferring his style and he's preferring my style, so we kind of went the other way. Kind of a nice way of dealing with it. We actually had a lot of fun and got to know each other in the process. So the cultural difference do matter. Part of it is the exchange rate. Sometimes the exchange rate, people make money on these. So here we have the American dollar. We have a Canadian dollar as well. The exchange rate between the two of them, normally a Canadian dollar, they range from $1.25 to $1.40, depends what it is in value to the American dollar. Well, that doesn't mean it's worth more. That means that the American dollar can actually have much more purchasing power because we have a strong dollar. Well, that's nice when we want to go buy Canadian goods, but when they want to buy American goods, they're paying a higher amount of money. So you have a lot of wealthy Canadians coming here, and literally a lot of them own houses in the South United States because it's a little bit colder in Canada than here. So you'll see that exchange rate over there. I was in Egypt one time, and I'm in a bank, and it was surprising the differences. I went in the bank one day, and then I went back 2 weeks later, and there actually was a significant amount between the Egyptian pound versus the American dollar. They fluctuate quite a bit. The U.S. dollar is the number one trading item on planet Earth. If you want to get anything done in any country, if you just pull out of your wallet a $100 American bill, that is the ultimate door key to almost every single aspect out there. People love American money in the aspect of it can buy an awful lot of things from whatever goods you're pursuing. Wall Street Journal one time, and a reporter was going down the street of a city in South America that was going through hyperinflation, and held a $20 bill outside the window of the car and asked for bids. And as the car went down the block, the bids got higher and higher for that $20 bill. So it's interesting how much that value is a big deal. BRICS stands for 5 major economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. China right now has become a pariah because of its inappropriate activities that a lot of us think is actually when they invaded the Ukraine. But that being said, you're seeing the BRICS, there's 5 huge economies coming up. Brazil is a super gigantic powerhouse in South America. Pay attention to that. India has massive power coming up economically. It doesn't have as many billionaires and doesn't have the massive wealth of a population, but it's got a massive population overall. So when their middle class begins to emerge, right now we see a small middle class as it expands, and it is already almost in front of our eyes. We're going to see India becoming a gigantic economic powerhouse. China already is, as well as South America. We call them BRICS because they hold about 40% of the world's population overall. So understanding those cultural differences, we have one model over here called the Hofstede model, and I'm going to briefly touch on it. I go into much more detail when I'm teaching international business, but with that, some of the variations, a big thing is the language. There's different nuances. You'll see similarities in European cultures with the United States. That really is where the mass roots come from. but those similarities, so you can start applying a lot of them to South American and certainly Canadian cultures. But when you start trying to apply them to Asian cultures, you miss an awful lot of nuances on language. To some extent, you have Latin dominated the Europe to the point that Italy, Spain, and France, they all have similar roots. So the language, if you understand one language, you can kind of understand the overall language between them. Although the only time I learned language, I got D's and C's in it, so don't take my word for that. But the reality of it really comes down to the nonverbal communication between the Americas and Asia, that they don't match at all. A friend of mine, she's Japanese, and I knew her for about 10 years before we had this conversation, and we're talking, and she says, David, I'm Japanese, and I still think Japanese. I came to this country when I was 14, so when you have your puns and your jokes, I don't get them, and I don't think they're funny. Oh, well, thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate that. Okay, so at least she was pretty blunt about it. They have a different sense of humor, and that's what she was communicating to me. Or it could be that she thought my puns are really bad, which wouldn't be true because they're always funny. Anyway, so that being said, time orientation is really different. Just so you know, we have 5 different kinds of time orientation. There's a Stanford professor that wrote about 120 articles on it altogether. It really is interesting. But here we're talking about cultural time orientation. If you are late in Japan, it's an ultimate insult. If you're late in South America, it's the norm. You have different aspects of that. Religion plays a major role in every culture, whether they know it or not. And a lot of religion, the rules of religion often roll over into the political and the legal aspect as well. You have in the United States, much as I will make fun of lawyers until the very day that I die, okay, I will make fun of them. Some countries are desperate to have even close to the legal system that we have because you can sue somebody for not fulfilling the contract. Other countries, you don't have that ability. So pay attention to some of those aspects of it. Don't do something that really you'll regret your entire life in another country because their laws may put you in prison for a long time. So be careful. Don't violate whatever rules or laws they may have because of the fact you may pay a price far higher than you would here at home. So a lot of times U.S. managers fail on other foreign assignments. They become very frustrated. I know a couple people that worked over in Saudi and Arabia, and so the scuba diving was great, but you had to be careful. My one buddy decided he was there by himself, and they have 3 different sections for dining. One is for family dining, one is for men, and one is for women. Well, he decided to go sit in the family section, even though he was actually single at the moment. And he had a couple people staring at him and everything else. And he's, I don't care what they say. Well, that wasn't the smart thing to do. He got out of that one. But the reality is he wasn't being respectful to the cultures of the people that were there. So pay attention to the nuances that you have in different countries because they mean something to them. And if they see you there and they see you in a different setting, the response may be different. So be careful in that aspect of it. If you're a visitor, be respectful of what's going on around you. There's a lot of different books that are out there that'll tell you all about the cultural dimensions. Some of them are good, and some of them, they go on so deep it's hard to figure out. You almost need to experience it. And if you do take that pathway, you're better off studying. If you're going to be moved to an office in a foreign country, I recommend you find some type of cultural immersion activity prior to going there. And that way you don't end up what we call putting your foot into your mouth, which is not a good thing. So be careful in the process over there. Cultural variations in language, even the space. One time I was at a special event, and a guy who's a friend of mine for years, he doesn't have a sense of personal space, and he was an American his entire life. He was white, Caucasian, but he kept on coming to us. So I'm in a room with about 75 people, and the room it had some space, but he kept on getting closer and closer. Well, I'm an American, and I like to have that 18 to 24 inch space, and to get closer to finally all of a sudden I find myself backed up against the wall, literally have my arms out. and he didn't get the message that I was uncomfortable. Yes, I was. So interpersonal space. But if you go over in Japan, they have people in the subway stations that have nice suits on and they have white gloves. Their job is to push people into the subway so they all fit. That is their work. So their space issue isn't even close to what Americans are. They have no problem in the aspect of being shoulder to shoulder, chest to chest with somebody else for a period of time while they're on a subway. That is part of their culture. Even that aspect of it, the communication is different, time orientation, their religion and respect for each other's religion, law and political stability. Hofstede has 6 different dimensions. I'm not going to dive into that except for the overall title of them. I'm not going to dive into the specificity of it because you can spend multiple weeks studying this process. But the number one is the degree to which people in the culture are integrated into different groups. You'll have United States, you have all kinds of different groups here. Other countries, they're far more pronounced than we have over here. So you look on the different types of groups you have, looking for people to associate with. You have that aspect of it. The power distance that you have as to the seniority, age, rank, and title, they all play major roles. They don't necessarily play a major role here. We have people that are novices trying to sit down and be the experts of people that have been in the field for 20 years. Sometimes it seems inappropriate because of the fact that they don't have the knowledge base to compete in those circles, but we don't know because we're Americans. That's the nature of it. With other countries, that would be viewed as totally inappropriate. Pay attention to that. The uncertainty avoidance about how much uncertainty. Americans have a higher level of embracing uncertainty than almost any other culture. That makes us unique. It makes us bigger risk takers than other cultures. And by the way, we have more patents and copyrights in the United States per capita than any other country on planet Earth. But that being said, the price you pay is a lot. There's a lot of failure in the process. 7 out of 10 businesses have the possibility of failing unless there's a support structure in place of that. You also have the male-female aspect of it, the indulgence versus restraint. Sometimes people tend to sit down and not have gratification. In the United States, it seems we all want to be gratified as much as we can. I want more chocolate. Yes, chocolate and pizza. That chocolate with pizza, even better. Maybe not. Anyway, and then pragmatic versus normative. So I want you to know that Hofstede has 6 dimensions and there's other tools out there. But when you go into another country, then this becomes relevant. Then keep the PowerPoint slide presentation in your computer and refer back to this because all of a sudden this too will become much more important to you. Look even on the social distance and the personal distance and intimate distances. This is a pretty good chart on the differences between them. And it may not seem much, but look at Saudi. Okay, you really have the aspect of social distance is 4.2 feet, and the United States is 3.1 feet. If you're talking to somebody from Saudi, and I've had this experience, okay, the aspect of being further apart, if you start violating that space on the inside, you're going to make them uncomfortable. If you're trying to get a business deal, you don't want them to be uncomfortable. Or maybe if you're negotiating, maybe you do. Just depends where you're at in the process. So population counts. Here's the population on planet Earth for the various religions. Religion plays a significant role in each and every single culture. And if it's a dominant religion, some of the mores and some of the religious beliefs will then feed over into the social culture as well. So pay close attention. Make certain that you don't walk in and insult somebody and have them angry at you just because you had a miscue. If you do, apologize profusely and blame somebody else that Herbie here told you and let them blame him. Just kidding. Maybe. Herbie. Sorry. Anyway, so a lot of times, expats, we call them, they tend to leave their foreign assignments early because of the challenges of adjusting. I had a friend of mine, they were in a compound, and it was all the Americans there because Americans like to drink alcohol, and this country, that was pretty much forbidden in their culture. So somebody started they made a still in their country. And so it was one of these moments of they would have American parties and in their own compound and not let anybody from the country in because it violated local law. But that being said, they had a really closed community, and they felt like they were outsiders all the time. Sometimes it can be very frustrating unless you move out of like a compound and try to actually assimilate yourself into the culture. So it depends, but be careful. Make certain you're comfortable. If you have family coming with you, make certain that you also can sit down and make them comfortable in the process. It can be a spectacular experience. It can also be a massive failure. So be careful in the process. If you have an opportunity, I recommend always take it, but I think it's a good idea for you to pursue that. Cultural differences matter. They're significant. Know what they are. Call people by name and learn about them. That is in every culture. Learn the basics of the culture in which you're engaged and ask for help in doing so. You'd be surprised how kind people are to help somebody that is trying to fit in, trying to sit down and have a relationship with them on a business or personal relationship. Cultural differences matter. Take care.